Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. I hope you're staying safe. I'm Glenn Schwartzberg, and I'm going to be your host today for Live Along Essbase, the past, the present, and the future. For those of you who don't know me, I'm going to kill some time for a second, giving an introduction to as other people are still logging on. I've been working with Essbase since about 1992. I'm what's called an Oracle ACE Director, which means that I go out and I evangelize the products. It also means I get to work with the development teams. And I've been working with the Essbase development team on cloud versions of Essbase since it was in its alpha version. So I know a little bit about the product. I've been helping Oracle all along with the product. And so if you have any questions about it, please put them into the question box and I will try to answer them for you as I go along. This recording will be recorded and you will be able to get copies of it after the session is over. But again, please use the question and answer box as we go through, and that will make life easier for all of us. So today what we're talking about is Essbase, the past, the present, and the future. But before we do that, we're going to get into a very slight ad. I work for a company called Interrel Consulting. You've gotten lots of our emails. And we're really here to leave the world a better, smarter place than we found it. That's why we do all of these free webcasts, even to our competition. We are pretty proud of ourselves being Analytics Partner of the Year, the Global and North America Partner of the Year. We have lots of experience in a lot of the EPM products and Essbase and BI. We specialize in what used to be the Hyperion line of products. So we're really happy about that. And if you have any questions about that, I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. So let's go into a quick history of Essbase. So 1991 was a great year. I mean, think about it. The average price of gas was $1.12. Apartheid in South Africa was abolished that year. Dances with Wolves, we got to watch Kevin Costner playing around on the plains with Indians. Great year. The internet was made available to unrestricted commercial use. And by the end of the year, there was over 1 million subscribers to it. And the technology that we know as Essbase was released. So I'm thrilled with that. So let's talk about Essbase. Essbase was born in 1991 to a company called Arbor Software. It was built in 1991. It kind of wasn't released to the world till 1992. The first operating system that it ran on was OS 2, Operating System 2. And it used both Excel and Lotus 1-2-3, if you remember that. And it ran on Windows and Macs. And to install Essbase took about 5 or 6 floppy disks, and you entered in yes, 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 and you were done with the install. I first met Arbor back in early 1992, and I immediately loved it. I kind of switched my direction of being a DBA and a developer to being an Essbase developer. Sorry. So, whoops, went back. So we kind of need to follow the history. We have to understand a little bit about Hyperion. Hyperion was started about 1981. Robert Thompson formed a company known as IMRS that would become Hyperion. He realized that the old way of using mainframes was slow and expensive, and he could develop software that would allow multiple users to get their financial data on their personal computers. So he started off building something called microcontrol, and then that evolved into Pillar, which is a planning and budgeting solution, and Enterprise, which was a consolidation process, the precursor to Hyperion financial management. So Arbor was this young upstart in Silicon Valley. Hyperion had its root back in the 80s, West Coast accounting. Hyperion and Arbor met and decided that they were meant for each other. It was love at first sight. Year was 1998. It was a hellacious merging of cultures. Arbor took Hyperion's name, but Hyperion took Arbor's headquarters, board of directors, stock price, leadership, and just about everything else. Its notoriety. So along comes Oracle, and on March 1st, 2007, it purchased Hyperion for $3.3 billion in cash. And those of us who were Essbase guys thought that Essbase was dead. Oracle had Oracle OLAP, a competing product to Essbase. And we thought that Oracle bought it, one, for the planning and budgeting solution that Hyperion had, but two, to get rid of the competition of Essbase, to basically get the client list. Boy, were we ever wrong, because what was considered Larry Ellison's $3.3 billion toy became the strategic direction for Oracle extremely quickly. So Oracle spawned a lot of children, Essbase Server, Essbase Administration Services, Provider Service, Integration Services, which was replaced by Essbase Studio, and the Essbase add-in itself. Now, before we go any further, I actually want to do a little poll to see how long you guys have been around. So I'm going to launch a poll, and let's see how we do with this. Trying to see how my audience is here. And we'll give you guys just a couple minutes. You guys are doing great on voting. We'll leave it open for another 5 seconds. And I am actually amazed. A lot of you are, over 43% of you have 10 years plus. Actually, 60 some odd percent have more than 10 years. So I'm truly amazed. So some of what we talk about will be old hat to you guys. So once Oracle acquired Essbase, Essbase started to sprout its wing. Now, there were a lot of things that happened before Oracle got it. In version 5 was the first year we had dynamic calcs. In version 7.1.2, we got our first look at ASO cubes and EAS. But once Oracle got it, it started to sprout its wings with ASO restructuring, export database enhancements, all sorts of stuff in 9.2. And as we go through it, you know, we get all the way up to 11, and I'm not going to read all of these. You'll have the slides. But by the time we got up to 11.1.2.4, we have a lot of great things, including hybrid aggregation, thread pooling, Exalytics optimization, smart view enhancement for calculations, just all sorts of things. So it definitely hasn't been a static product. It's had a lot of enhancements over time, and especially hybrid in 11.123.500 was a real game changer for us. And as we can see, Oracle continues to make improvements and important updates as we go along. So what's happening with Essbase? Well, to get the exact Mark Twain quote, what people say the quote was is, the report of my death has been greatly exaggerated, that type of thing. The actual quote was, the report of my death was an exaggeration. And the same thing is true for Essbase. I don't know how many times I've heard, well, Essbase is dead or Essbase is dying. So what is the truth? Is Essbase on its deathbed, or is it living in the luxury under an assumed name in Brazil? What really is happening with Essbase? Well, Essbase has a foothold in a lot of different areas. First of all, in the Fusion financials, or the Fusion SaaS applications, GL, territory management, project analytics, they all run on Essbase. And that's powering over 3,000 pods on Oracle Public Cloud. So Essbase platform as a service. So basically, what is the Oracle Analytics? Oracle Analytics Cloud is powering 500 pods on the public cloud. EPM, planning and financial consolidation applications, 15,000 pods on public cloud. And then on-prem and on Exalytics, we don't really count it by pods or the like, but basically over 10,000 customers. And I think that's a really low number. So Essbase is the engine, the backbone, the foundation for around 20,000 pods. And if you think about Fusion Financials, those are huge. Those are thousands of users each. So we've got a huge installed base that are using Essbase in one form or another. But what has happened is, going forward, Essbase is not part of Oracle Analytics anymore. If you remember when we first started with everything, we started with Essbase being part of EPM, and then Essbase got moved to BI, and BI got transformed into Oracle Analytics. But reality is, Essbase is no longer part of that. Essbase is now continuing, but it is really a standalone database. And so, as far as we know, Essbase is going to be a standalone database, and now is part of the Oracle Database Group. We've gotten mixed messages over time. First Essbase was an OLAP database, and then when Oracle bought it, they said, oh, we only have one database, and that's Oracle Database. But Essbase is a great analytics tool. So Essbase is an analytics tool, it's not a database. Well, in about 2018, 2019, they said, well, I guess we were wrong, and Essbase really is a database, just like Oracle OLAP was a database. So we know it's real, we know it's not going away. It's now moved away from the PAS organization and is under the database organization. So there are enhancements and there are versions of Essbase for on-prem, for Essbase on OCI in the marketplace, and then we'll also be talking about a new release for on-prem. So a lot of people like to think that there has been a huge chasm that's been created between Oracle Essbase and the Oracle Analytics products. And while some may think that's true, what I really like to think about it is Oracle Essbase, or just Essbase, is at the center of our analytics universe serving the masses. So as we saw in the earlier slide, it doesn't matter what you're using, it can be powered by Essbase. Whether it be Fusion Financials or standalone Essbase or EPM Cloud, it's all Essbase. It's the product that we know and love behind the scenes. So does this mean that there's a future for Essbase? Oh, most definitely. You know, the multidimensional view of our data really is the way that the business looks at data. The fact that it's self-service allows it to be handled by the users with no specialized knowledge of SQL or other query languages. We have all of the capabilities of zooming in, drilling in. You know, very few products support ragged hierarchies really well. Essbase does. And the biggest thing is it's non-technical. It's got a great security model that we can set up security down to users, down to groups. We can be very restrictive about it. So as more and more companies are moving to the cloud, where's the best place for on-prem Essbase cubes to move? Well, is it OAC Essbase, 19C Essbase, 20C Essbase, freeform planning, other EPM clouds or other? Well, I'm going to take one out of the mix right now. And the first one that I'm taking out is Oracle Analytics Cloud Essbase, because as I mentioned, it is no longer part of the Analytics Cloud platform, and those users that are on it are being sunsetted at the end of their contracts. They'll be allowed to continue on with it, but there are no improvements being made on Essbase in OAC. So really, what are your upgrade options? Well, if you have Essbase on-prem, or if you have Essbase OAC, you can today migrate to Essbase 19C and probably in a few weeks or so to Essbase 20C in OCI. Basically, if you own Essbase today, and by owning Essbase, I don't mean as part of EPM Cloud or EPM, I mean standalone Essbase. So if you bought Essbase Plus, if you bought Essbase as a part of BI Foundation Suite, or if you bought Essbase as standalone Essbase, you own it today, and you can migrate it to 19C/20C as a BYOL. If you already had migrated to Oracle Analytics Cloud, so if you're on OAC Essbase today, you can still go to 19C. And I'll in a couple slides, I'll show you how that's done. In addition, if you don't own Essbase today, you can purchase Essbase 19C today on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure as part of what they call the Universal Credit Model. And Safe Harbor, because this date has changed about 3 times in the last 6 months, but Essbase 21C is supposed to be coming out early next year and it will be available to be installed either on OCI, so Essbase in the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or also on your own hardware. And whether that own hardware is your own data center or AWS or Amazon Cloud or some other cloud or some third-party provider, it will be available in all of those places. So what about Essbase today? So like June 24th, 2020. So really what we have today is we have Essbase 19C, and I believe that it is 19.0.2. And forgive me if I can't remember they keep changing the way that they number things, but the latest patch level out is a .2 patch. And it really is just the next version of Essbase. It's available today on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. I mentioned that the 21C version is going to be out for on-prem, and the 19 stands for the year it was released, and the C really stands for cloud. So when we get to 21C, it kind of all is cloud, even though it's going to be on-prem as well. There will be a release probably in the near future that's going to be called 20C. What's nice. So if we are moving to 19C or to 21C, it will be an out-of-place migration. If you're on-prem and you're moving to OCI, you've got to move everything up to the OCI. If you're coming from OAC, you have to build out your instances and migrate them all. So basically you have to set up an OCI instance, you have to install Essbase from the marketplace, and then you have to move your clouds to 19C. And the movement of the actual cubes is pretty easy. We basically do an LCM export out of OCI and move it up into 19C. So for those of you who don't have the big background, let's talk about 19C features. And so it's got an enhanced hybrid engine. The initial 12C that came out on the cloud had a hybrid engine that was fully capable, but they've done a lot of enhancements to make the engine even better. Deeper integration with SmartView. We now have runtime prompts that actually work, that we can pass information back and forth. We also have now the ability to use calculation tuples with calculation scripts. So we could pass in the exact intersection that we want calculated, so our fixed statement becomes even tighter. We have scenario management. I actually did a video that's in the Interall Financial Network that talks about using sandboxes and scenario management in order to do what-if scenarios. So during the COVID pandemic, if we wanted to do, a best case, worst case scenario, we can use it with scenario management, and it is intelligent, and it passes into the calc scripts the scenario that you're running and fixes on it, so you're only getting the calculation for that particular scenario. Lots of performance improvements, lots of web improvements, especially in the outline editor. They made it more EAS-like to make it easier for us to transition. Now this is standalone Essbase only. So what is 19C? Really, it's the same Essbase that we know and love. We have ASO, BSO hybrid cubes. We have all of the things that we've always had, powerful calculations, ragged hierarchies, asymmetrical queries, smart view and Excel, you know, all of those things. So what's new? Well, it's now being hosted right now on OCI, and in the future there will be an on-prem installation. We get to that in about 3 slides, I think. We now have the Jet UI that is a lot cleaner than it's been. We have Cube Designer, so we can use Excel to manage our metadata and data. We have integrations with Oracle Analytics. We have the ability to upload, download files, use what's called CLI, and a whole lot more. So I do have a couple of questions that I'll go ahead and answer now. The first one is, Essbase 19c available for Linux installs? And on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI, the only way you can install it is for Linux. When we get to 21c, again, I have this in a couple slides, but as a precursor, the initial release will be Linux only. Further down the road, they will have a Windows install. And then the next question is, will the upgrade from 19c to 20c be in place or out of place? And the latest that I've heard is that 20c is just purely a patch level for 19c, so it will be an in-place upgrade. There's nothing that they're putting into it that's going to be out of place. Could I be wrong on that because Oracle changes their mind all the time? Yes, but as of today, the last I heard, it was going to be an in-place install. So moving forward. So there are some things that are not supported in 19c or weren't supported in OAC either. Things like varying attributes, and in all my years I had one client use that. Currency conversion, again, I only had one client since 1992 that used the built-in currency conversion. EAS, right now the way we do it is with the Jet interface and with Cube Designer. Essbase Studio goes away, but the good thing is they've built drill through into Essbase, which means that I don't get any sales of my Essbase Studio book anymore. But frankly, the drill through from what they built in is better than what you could get with Essbase Studio. I worked with the development team on some of the Studio shortcomings, and they've made it a lot better. In the cloud, everything is Unicode. That's not a big deal. You just have to switch over to it. It doesn't really impact much, except if you're trying to move data back and forth between on-prem and you're extracting it from the cloud. It's going to be in a Unicode format, and you actually have to run it through utilities to convert back to non-Unicode. So what really is different? Well, the Jet interface versus EAS, no more Essbase Studio. We do now with 19c have ODBC connections and connection ability. We have an expanded app folder structure. Hybrid is turned on by default in the cloud, and Oracle has been nice enough to give us a lot of sample applications to show us how to do things in the gallery. And I use those all the time for showing people how to do things like turn on, to do the drill through, or to turn on intelligent filters. That's probably my favorite one. But it also has great examples in there for passing tuples back to a calculation script, and how that can become hugely efficient, using MDX insert to be able to make life easier for us instead of having to do an ASO execute allocation, those type of things. So let's talk about a little bit about pricing today. And so Essbase on OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. It's customer managed. So basically you install it, you apply the patches. There are two ways to get it. BYOL, bring your own license. And what you do is you continue to pay your on-prem maintenance, and the usage licensing is the same that you had on-prem. So if you have per user licensing, you're limited to that number of users. If you had CPU licensing, that's the number of CPUs that you have available. And what's really interesting is, so if you were per user licensing, they don't care how many CPUs you use. You could bring up an instance that has 52 CPUs on it for as long as you're using the same on-prem user licensing. Now there is a charge on the BYOL because you're going to pay for the storage you're using. There is a database that you have to spin up, either an Oracle database as a service, DBAS, or an Oracle transaction processing database, ATP, and you pay for that usage. So there is some minor additional cost in addition to your maintenance, but it's actually pretty minor. The second way you can get it is using the universal credit model. So basically you commit to an amount that you're going to spend every month and a term of that. And when you bring up an Essbase instance that way, it's always based on OCPUs. And that universal credit model, the price that you have, you factor in the cost for your database and your storage and and the number of CPUs that you're using. So it's all based on a consumption basis. So what you're consuming is how quickly you bleed through your universal credits. Now, the universal credit model is not expensive. It's $1.41 per OCPU hour of Essbase. The ATP or DBAS has different pricing, and load balancers, and if you have a Bastion host and a few other things are some additional costs. But I think my load balancer is probably costing me $30 a month, and my storage is really cheap as well. So it's basically based on what you activate. So that's what we have on Essbase today. What about Essbase 20C, which is coming to us in the very near future? So Essbase 20C is supposed to be really the next patch for OCI, and it's going to be an OCI only patch. And what they've done is added some new feature and functionality. Most of this is basically setting, aside from a whole bunch of bug fixes, they've listened to different customers, and some of them I've been at, some of them not, about the way that things get deployed. So for example, I had a customer who wanted to have a private deployment of Essbase itself, meaning that there were no public IP addresses. Everything was in a subdomain that they defined on their OCI instance. Prior to this release, that wasn't supported. The availability domain wasn't, the setting up what the availability domain was not supported. Load balancer can now be on a private subnet. We can now actually have smaller data and configuration volumes than we had before. Some people were finding, the terabyte of storage was more than they needed. So we can now have smaller instances because we can scale them up if we need to. We can now actually get this configuration to be executed in the background so we don't tie up our machines while we're doing this. They've integrated this with Oracle Notification Service. So now we can get notifications on different events within our instances. And they've also tied it into the cloud infrastructure monitoring service. So it's now supporting and giving us more and more operational metrics. So a couple more questions. Is 19C compatible with RHEL7X? And I believe right now it's on 6X. By the time it gets to on-prem, I believe it's going to be supporting 7X. What is Essbase 11.2 and is 19C an upgrade of 12.2? And I will actually answer that with almost my very last slide in the deck. The universal credit model does not seem to account for needing development, production, and business continuity in a way that cost is comparable with BYOL. So if you are, just like on-prem, if I want a dev instance and a production instance, I spin up two different servers. If I want a dev instance and a production instance in OCI, I spin up two instances. Yes, you are going to be paying for both of those instances. If you are doing BYOL, it's included in the cost. If you are doing universal credits, you are going to pay for that, but some of the costs are shared. So for example, if I'm using a DBAS, I can use the same VBAS for both dev and production if I want to. I don't have to have two different DBAS instances. So Oracle said in an ODTUG at home learning session that 20C would be available on-prem fourth quarter of that year. Has that changed in the last 4 weeks? And it depends on what you're talking about. So there's going to be a patch out for 19C in the next few weeks, next month or so, at least the last I heard. That is going to be the 20C. They've been talking about 20C for on-prem, which they've talked about at the end of this year, but the latest news that I have heard is it's going to be 21C and be at the beginning of next year. And we get a slide about that in like 2 minutes. So we've talked about Essbase 19C, Essbase 20C being close. What about 21C? That's going to be somewhat near future. So Essbase 19C that's running on OCI on-prem is coming soon, but it's going to be called 21C. And again, Oracle keeps changing. It was going to be 20C, now it's going to be 21C. Initially, it's going to run on Red Hat 7. The databases, as of today, that it supports are 12.1, 12.2, and 18C. I added 19C with a question mark because by the time 21C comes out, I'm going to guess that it's going to be certified for 19C. So what about integration with other security modules, directory services? Well, it's going to support WebLogic, if that's what you're using today. It supports IDCS if you have OCI. And the newest one that they've added is Hyperion Shared Services Security Support. So if you're using shared services, you don't, it will be integrated into shared services as well. As of about 3 months ago, that wasn't going to happen, but from a lot of feedback, it is required, or it is going to be available, I'm sorry. So initially it's going to be on Linux and Linux only. Long term, they're going to have an expanded support matrix. So the next release that it'll come out on is Windows. We don't know how quickly, but we do know that they're going to have to do Windows because frankly, the majority of the customer base is Windows based. Only really large customers that are using a Linux or Unix type environment. And they'll come out in a staggered manner. Why Linux first? Well, that's what they're running on OCI. And so it's very easy for them to port it to the on-prem. It will be one code line, but because it's on Linux today, it's easier to bring it on Linux. Will they support other flavors of Unix and Linux? Yes, I think that they contractually have to have it on AIX and on HP. So I mentioned that you had to have a database component, and the question is an autonomous database a required component? And the answer is up until the .2 patch, yes. As a matter of fact, it had to be an ATP, autonomous transaction processing. Now with the .2 release, you can actually use a regular, and I don't know the term, but I'm just going to call it a regular DBAS today. So just a regular Oracle database as a service. They're also talking about when it goes to on-prem, they're going to support, not necessarily immediately, but they'll also support SQL Server as their backend as well. So question on going to 21C, how does the cost differ for 21C on-prem? Frankly, if you own on-prem today, it's nothing more than continue paying your maintenance and you get it. It is just the next release in the on-prem version. So, so when we talk about 21C, a couple of things that they're planning on including with it, and this isn't going to be exclusively for on-prem. A lot of these features you're going to see in patches that come out to Essbase on OCI first. So they're working on a new currency conversion module that is much more robust than the old one. They're changing the way that you can run the calcs and report scripts. So you don't have to get out and run a job. You can actually execute it straight from the editor. Instead of, in a job, instead of loading a single file, we can now load multiple files or multiple ODBC sources in a single job. Right now, we've complained that, if we have database substitution variables, they're on one tab, and if we have application level, they're on a different tab, and server base are on a third place. They're merging that all into a single location. Deleting the application and server logs will now have the abilities. Now, they've been improving the UI to have a more EAS look and feel, and there's more customization that you can do with it, and more that that's coming up. But when they get to on-prem, they know that there are some things that we can do in EAS today that we can't do in the UI. For example, bring up two outlines side by side and copy part of a hierarchy from one to another. So what they're doing is they're creating what they're calling an EAS Lite that will have some functionality in it. So some of those things that we've been complaining about that you can't do, you'll be able to use this EAS Lite application to be able to do them all. And they're continuing to improve Cube Designer, and we're getting the next generation of hybrid that has much better support for complex top-down calculations, dependent formulas, and a whole bunch of other things. And that should actually be out in patches before the on-prem version. So things that you need to know about 21C is it is customer managed, so you install and you apply patches. You buy it on the Oracle Marketplace. And the on-prem version, notice I have it in bold. The on-prem version will be offered. It's not offered today. So it will be offered in the future. So I've been boring you for quite a bit of time. I want to do another poll. If I can bring it up. So how are you guys using Essbase today? On-prem, in the cloud, on OCI, and you should be able to select multiples, I hope. If they set up the poll right, I couldn't do it myself. And we'll give you just a few more seconds. We've got most people answering. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So really interesting, most of you are using on-prem today. 12%, so 20% of you are using it in the cloud. A few of you are using freeform planning, and we'll get to what freeform planning is in just a minute. So really interesting that most of you guys are on-prem today, so a lot of you are wondering about how to continue your on-prem world. So as we move on, yes, there still really is another option. Essbase is truly not dead. And what is that other option? Well, there's a new Essbase option in EPM Cloud. And you have to be on the Enterprise Edition of EPM Cloud. So that's not EPBCS. That's what's called EPM Cloud Enterprise. And it supports what they call freeform planning. And freeform planning is nothing more than Essbase. So basically you can take an existing Essbase outline that you have on-prem and upload it into the EPM Cloud, and you don't have to have the required planning dimensions. It doesn't require all the specialized stuff on planning, but what is nice about it is you do get some of the planning features. So for example, you can use planning forms against a freeform planning cube. And when I say freeform planning, think Essbase. And I think I'm just going to call it Essbase on this slide from now on. So I can use that. I can use EPM security. I can use the standard dimension editor in EPM Cloud. It really is Essbase in a SaaS form. So software as a service, which means unlike 19C, 20C, where you have to do all of your own patching, Oracle will do the patching for you on a monthly basis. So every time that they do a monthly upgrade, they will do any patches to Essbase, to these freeform planning applications that they need. That means that if at some point they upgrade EPM Cloud to Essbase 19C, you will get the 19C. Right now, EPM Cloud is using a special version of Essbase, somewhere between 11.124.500 and 12C. We're not exactly sure what they're using, but it's supposed to have full hybrid functionality. So when might it make sense for you to migrate to use freeform planning? So, well, first of all, as I said, there's no required dimensions. You can use hybrid BSO or ASO outlines. You can view it in the web or smart view. You get all of the things that you get in planning, calc manager, forms, approvals, smart push, and a lot more. It will support a large number of dimensions, a large number of members. This might make sense if you're already an EPM Enterprise customer and you're looking to move to a managed solution. So if you've already got EPM and you've got a few Essbase cubes that you need to have in the cloud, you want to get rid of your on-prem Essbase footprint, this is a viable solution. And if you're an EPM Enterprise customer, there's no additional cost. You can bring up as many pods as you want. The downside to this is that if you move a cube into a freeform planning, you only get one database per pod. So if you have a really large number of Essbase cubes, or you do a lot of integration between those cubes, or you're using transparent partitions, those type of things, then freeform planning may not be what you're looking for. But if you've got a few cubes and you're already an EPM Enterprise customer, it may be a great fit for you, especially since they are doing all of the support for you. So today you have a couple of alternatives to move your native cubes to the cloud if you're going to move them to the cloud. Oh, and boy, that's a great typo. That should not say warily, that should say early next year. So today you can move to the cloud in two ways, and we'll talk about them. Early next year, we can add a third option to move to Essbase 21C on-prem, or again, still in OCI. So option one today is move to freeform planning, subscribe to EPM Cloud Enterprise, set up your business processes for each cube, and migrate your cubes to freeform planning. Option two is to move to 19C, 20C on OCI. If you own Essbase today, you can do it as a BYOL. Read the BYOL licensing so you know how you can actually move it. So this is a pretty much of an eye chart that I'm not going to go over here, but this is a good way for you to look at the comparison between the three options. And if we look at user licensing, this is one of the big ones. So if for EPM Enterprise, it's a named user license. For 19C on OCI, it's either whatever your BYOL licensing says, or it's unlimited users based on the CPU license if you either have an enterprise license today or if you're buying it with universal credits. So one more poll, and then I'm going to get to one more set of slides. So I'm just curious what you guys see in your future for how you're going to be hosting Essbase in the future. As things swing wildly back and forth. Okay, let's close the polling. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So interestingly enough, a lot of you say you're going to continue to use 11.124. Remember, 11.124 goes on lifetime support at the end of next year, so you might consider doing an out-of-place upgrade to 21C. And it's interesting, everybody else is kind of split on how they're planning on doing things in the future. So there's one more topic I want to talk about because this has been a concern of users since 11.2 was announced. And so really what we have to talk about is what the Essbase migration for standalone Essbase is to 11.2. And I have to thank Oracle for this slide. I stole it from a presentation that they did just the other day. So 11.2 is the latest release of EPM. And if you read the licensing for 11.2, it talks about limited use Essbase. And what limited use Essbase means is Essbase that is used within planning. So either a BSO planning cube or an ASO reporting cube that is built within the planning framework. Standalone Essbase today is not supported with EPM 11.2. So if you're staying on-prem, what are your choices? So right now, staying on-prem, you can upgrade your EPM to 11.2, and right now you have to keep your standalone Essbase on a separate instance running 11.124. When 21C becomes available on-prem, you could migrate your standalone Essbase cubes to that 21C instance. And this slide was from the EPM group, so that what they're saying is, well, they would rather, instead of staying on-prem, move to EPM Cloud and use freeform planning apps today. I say that you could also use 19C as a BYOL model if you have on-prem Essbase today. Or you could have a hybrid. So you could have EPM on-prem and you could have your freeform planning apps in the cloud. To me, that one doesn't make sense because you have to have enterprise licensing for EPM Cloud, and that would be pretty costly, I think, because it's per user licensing. If you're just standalone Essbase, you don't have EPM, you stay on 11.124 until Essbase 21C comes out, or today you can move to the cloud on 19C, or again, you can move to SaaS. If you're on Essbase on OAC, you can either migrate it to 19C or move to SaaS. So hopefully that answered whoever had asked it way earlier. And Jerry, I think I said that Essbase 19C is running on OL6 in OCI, and I think you're correct, it's on 7 today. And somebody says we have about 15 Essbase cubes and heavily use FR, FDME, and Hyperion workspace for 11.2. Are we going to have to buy planning licenses to continue to use the workspace FDME, FRS pieces? So if you're migrating to 11.2, all of that stuff is included in the EPM licensing, the workspace, the FDME, Financial Reporting Studio are all included in that. If you're currently using EPMA today and you go to 11.2, there is a limited use DRM license that they're giving you as well. So hopefully I've answered all of the questions. I am just out of time. Please do join us for future webcasts, so EPM Cloud and OAC together at PEMCO, how to actually build Essbase cubes in freeform planning on 7.15. And finally, if you're already an EPM customer, what's interesting is Oracle is now offering strategic modeling for free for a year. So if you need help with that, let us know. Just email us at info@interworld.com. If I didn't answer your question or you run into one, just email me at either gschwartzberg@interworld.com or info@interworld.com, and I'll be happy to answer for you. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, and have a great day, everybody.